make the hard choices, take action, and keep moving forward has always been there from day one. And I've seen that as I've looked back into my, education, my schooling, and all the way through to university and career. I've always been about taking action. And I think that's come from, my roots.
This is Big 4 More, and I'm your host, Drew Leifheit, bringing you insightful interviews connected to the global consultancy sector. Regardless of where you're at in your career as an international consultant, your personal growth really drives how much you thrive. That's the gospel according to Premal Patel, someone who has not only built a successful business career, but has also dedicated himself to inspiring others through his work. Prem, as he's known, is the founder and CEO of TKOP World Ltd. As an accomplished executive leader, he's a trusted expert in customer loyalty, personalized shopper activation, and data optimization in the retail and marketing sectors. His visionary leadership, razor-sharp customer focus, and ability to simplify complex problems have enabled him to establish successful long-term partnerships with leading organizations in the UK and the Middle East, including Sainsbury's Group, NatWest, Visa, and American Express. But that's not all. Prem has recently published his book, which is called YANGA. It's both a word in some countries and an acronym. Your Actions Nourish Growth Ambitions. Be sure to stick around when I put Prem in the hot seat. I'll ask him for his 3 tips on how you can take immediate action towards your growth. Premal Patel of TKOP World, welcome to Big 4 More.
Thank you, Drew. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Okay, I know we've said some things about you, Prem, but who is Prem? Could you tell us a few things about yourself?
Who am I? That's the big question there. So I sometimes ask myself that a lot of the times. But
You know, I've come from very humble beginnings, from East Africa, Nairobi, Kenya, in fact. And, like many families, my family migrated to the UK and, I lived most of my life in the UK, in London, and grew up as a young, Asian guy in a new community, finding my way and slowly navigated, through a successful career. Worked across 3 continents, many global brands, and been through a lot of successes and failures. And I thought that would be, who am I? So, I did a lot of soul searching, Drew, about 2 years ago. And with my coach, who really helped me through this conversation, I realized that I needed a real purpose in the next years of my life. And, my purpose now is to inspire and improve the quality of life of as many people as I can. So that's who I am.
Now that's a wonderful sentiment. And could you talk a little bit about your book and the Younger philosophy, and tell us about the word and how you came to come up with this very interesting and inspiring acronym.
Sure. This is now one of my favorite topics to talk about nowadays. So look, Yanga is an actual word from West Africa. So I'm actually from East Africa, had nothing to do with West Africa, but I was looking for an angle. I was looking for something a little bit different. And I found this word Yanga, which represents, and it's an actual word used, it really represents strong self-belief, an assertive attitude towards life, a lot of self-confidence, and how somebody can sort of just get through day to day in a very positive mindset. And I thought that was bang on what I was looking for. That's always how I've seen life. The glass is always overflowing. It's not half full, it's not half empty, it just keeps flowing. And Yanga represents that, because you have to keep moving forward. And then I turned it into the acronym, your actions nourish growth ambitions. And that became the foundations of the content for my book.
Mm-hmm. I would just observe that it seems like a very apt concept for our times, though.
It definitely is. If you look at what's happening today, I completed at the end of 24, 30 years in the corporate world, through, having large teams, small teams, managed some very complex businesses. which were operational, 365 days, 24/7. I think life has just become just so fast, and it's very challenging for leaders. If you look at leadership today, how do leaders really manage change? And to be honest, I think we should just remove that word change altogether. That's my opinion, because it's no longer change. It's every day. I remember a few years ago working in some big organizations where we'd have a change management group. We'd work through change and it might take 6 months to 12 months. No one has time for that anymore. Even in sort of tech systems and the sort of AI world we're living in, things have to happen faster. So the pressure is coming on leaders to change faster. And the pressure then goes down the system in organizations for the senior leadership, the senior managers, and the juniors to deliver flawlessly at a much faster rate. So that's creating a big pressure pot in most organizations. And I think what most managers and leaders are missing is that thinking time. How do you take a step back and really think about what you're doing and really lean in and work on specific projects to make them work? Everyone's sort of scattered a little bit, doing a lot of different things all day long.
Right, right. Prem, if you were to delve into your personal experiences, life experiences, is there something that jumps out at you that kind of relates to, were you somehow prepared for the times that we're living now?
Don't think that anyone could be really prepared. I think it's just one of those things that happens over time. And I think the one sort of important life change that happened for me is when I was much younger, and I go back to thinking about what happened in my family, just to tell a bit of a story. My father passed away when I was 10 months old in a tragic car accident, so I never really had my father around. A grandfather picked up the pieces and brought us to the UK. But I always go back to thinking, how did my grandfather take action and make choices when his eldest son passed away, leaving behind his young wife at 22, my sister at 2.5, and me at 10 months. And my grandfather was about to retire and go back to India and settle down and have a really, relaxing time. But he decided to make the hard choice to come to the UK so he could carry on working, and we carried on. So I think this sort of that sort of behavior of make the hard choices, take action, and keep moving forward has always been there from day one. And I've seen that as I've looked back into my, education, my schooling, and all the way through to university and career. I've always been about taking action. And I think that's come from, my roots. And I always heard about my father that he was always a bit of an action figure. He just wanted to keep moving forward and doing things, and he didn't worry too much about whether things went wrong. I think today's world, there's too many people who do worry, right? Who worry about, what if I get it wrong? What's the consequence? What will happen? Who will say something? We worry about people's opinions and judgments. And I believe social media has had a big part to play in that, because everyone's looking at everyone else and seeing who's perfect out there. But is anyone really perfect out there? I suppose that's the thing. And, if you strive for perfection, you don't really achieve anything right in today's world.
I can attest to that.
Everyone does it. Everyone does it. It's someone, they always look at who's out there. They can try and compare, and you get a lot of feedback. As soon as a little bit of feedback comes on, whether maybe the way you look, the way you're coming across in a presentation, or anything like this, it suddenly becomes one of those comments that sticks in your subconscious mind, and it prevents you from progressing. So it's, how do you reframe your thinking? Yeah, you listen to feedback and you take the opinions, but that shouldn't hold you back.
Mhm, mm. Part of your personal story really rings true for me. I'm not sure if I always brought the goods during my life, but we had many monumental moves. I wasn't an expatriate, but was a child. We moved to California when I was about 11 years old. Um, and then, of course, I'm a long-term expatriate, but enough about me. I'm just mentioning that because it makes me think how when someone moves to a new place without much context and somehow they have to make things work, right? So
Yeah,
they're really facing, let's say cultural waves, for example, that, just to kind of figure out where they are and how things work. And it sounds as if your family kind of underwent that sea change.
absolute. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, imagine coming to a whole new country. My mum didn't even speak English. My grandmother didn't speak English, and we were making our way in a new community as, an Asian family trying to make their way. And, the whole ambition and the focus was to give us, me and my sister, a better education in our lives, because it was all about, every generation wants the next generation to improve and do better, and that's where the focus was. It was all about the education. And I think at that time in East Africa, the education system, was not like the British education system. So that's where the dream was, and we lived the dream in terms of the education. I was never really very good though at academically. I'll be honest. That disappointed my grandfather a lot. I just didn't get some of these formulas in maths and all these other areas, and I was more creative. And what the education system didn't allow too much at that point was the creativity. There was very much, there's A and B equals C, and there's one way of doing that. Today's world is much more different. Today's world, there's more of the blurred gray lines getting from A plus B. There's different ways of doing that to get to your end result. And I think, today's younger generation have a lot more creativity and opportunity to explore. Whereas in my day, it was one way or the other. And if you didn't get it, you failed your exams.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and having mentioned the younger generations and the opportunities out there, how do you feel though? What's your take on the pulse of how much people have a hunger to grow and develop themselves personally?
I feel it's more so today than I've ever seen. Everybody talks about personal development, growth, learning as an experience right the way through your life, and I'm a big believer of that. I recently took on a qualification to be a coach just like 2 years ago, at the age of like 54, right? So you can always learn more. And what I'm finding is there's so much content in the world. And I think there's too much content, which is confusing a lot of the younger generation as to where do they seek out the right information to help them grow, and who's there who can help them along the way. And quite often, parents do a great job. They're trying, they're working all hours, and they're trying to, bring up their kids in a really difficult, complex world, today. But sometimes it takes external, folks, coaches, mentors, to really bring out the best of people. And this is why you've probably seen a real growth now across the world of more coaches and more mentors in the marketplace, because corporations and a lot of the different employees in different levels, they seek that. Yeah, they find that as a confidential conversation, it works.
Right, right. This is just a reminder that you're watching Big 4 and More. I'm Drew Lifeit, and I'm speaking to Prem Patel, who's the author of YANGA Unplugged, and it's great to have him here. Oh, and Prem, in terms of what you're seeing around you, how much do you think people are taking action?
I don't think people are taking enough action. I think we talk a lot. As a global community, there's a lot of talk. If you just look at the news, you look at everywhere, there's so many conversations and so many discussions. Plans are made, but how many of these big global plans actually get executed? And you can only execute plans if you take action, right? So I think we try as a community to do too many things, and we have long-term plans. But in the world that I believe, and the younger world that I'm trying to create, is you look at life in more short-term sprints. If you actually looked at a full year and looked at your goals for the year and said, how do I achieve these in 12 weeks, in 90 days, you'd make different decisions. Suddenly your months become your weeks and your weeks become your days. And if you only had a day to make a decision, you would behave very, very differently rather than think, I've got 30 days to think about this, so I'll just keep pushing it out. So I feel we need to have faster action. We need to have more action. And if we start taking action, we actually progress. But, one of the interesting stats and the insights I've got in the book is that 84% of the community, they actually regret their inaction. That they're sitting back thinking about something, but they don't do it.
Right. Right. I was going to ask you this later, but as long as we're talking about this, are you able to offer maybe 3 tips for how someone can seize their action?
Sure. I mean, bringing it down to 3 is difficult. I mean, in each of the chapters of the book, there's 3 tips for everybody in each chapter, but I'll try and bring it down to 3. So the 3 tips I'm going to give are all around limiting beliefs. Because I believe we are in a society now where too many people have limiting beliefs. Again, it goes back to the judgments, the opinions, what they see, what they compare against. So the only person who has limiting beliefs is actually yourself. The only person who can actually overcome your limiting beliefs is yourself. And unless you take action and move things forward, you won't overcome your limiting beliefs. So those are my 3 key points, because if we are all waiting for someone else to do something for us, it's never going to happen. And it doesn't. So many people I know who have been waiting for somebody to, I'd say, save them in a big problem, or there's nobody coming to do that. You've got to do it on your own. But we wait for somebody else to either make the decision, make the choice, tell us what to do. And that world is yesterday. Today, we have to take charge of our own future and our own limiting beliefs, because that will help us reframe the way we think and we move forward.
Right. Now, you've experienced a pretty good degree of success in your business career, and so I'm wondering how you see the connection between, your own personal development and your success in business.
My career has been a whole life journey of learnings and experiences. Um, look, when I was younger, I was much more impatient. I wanted things fast. I wanted promotions fast. I felt I could do the job, and when I look back where I didn't get the promotion, or I didn't get the progress that I wanted, or the project I wanted to lead, I realize now why my managers or my leaders make those choices. They were obviously much wiser at that time, whereas I felt I could do the job. Over time, I've learned fast, and I've learned the hard way. I've been through I've been given some big opportunities to manage large teams at a very young age. And I love that. I love the whole leading people, enabling people, empowering them, and really getting the best out of the teams. But when you're very young, you don't always have the experience to get the best. So, had some tough times with, team members who are much older than me, who didn't feel I had enough experience or wisdom to guide them. So that always caused a bit of a challenge in the workplace. But learning through that and thinking, how can I influence them? How can I persuade them? And that's where I used to do a lot of reading and talking to other experienced individuals who helped me along the way. But moving to new cultures, like moving from the UK. I remember when I got a job in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, with a big financial institution. Many people in London said to me, that's the worst thing I could have done. I was moving from London, financial center, of the world to a degree, and moving to Riyadh. And they said, why would you do that?
I always saw it as a real opportunity to drive change and create a thriving culture in an organization and a place that was seeking that change. They wanted to move on and do things differently. So, I've always been about change and transformation and really looking at culture. And I loved adapting to that culture, and you have to go in with your eyes wide open and learn and really integrate yourself to different cultures. And as I did that, I felt myself, I was growing and my career started growing.
Right, right. Excellent, excellent. We touched on sort of difficult times a little bit earlier, whether they be in your personal life or yeah, maybe in your business life. And I'm wondering, what's a good strategy for embracing tough times and making something potentially positive out of them.
The strategy is relatively simple, Drew. You have to embrace the tough time. If you try and push it away and sort of try and hide under the rug or under the under the duvet and think it's going to go away, it's not going away. So when you face into a tough time, I would say take a step back, embrace it, and really think about what are your options and move forward with it, because that tough time can only be overcome if you enable it in your own mind. And too many people will walk away from problems and tough challenges because they feel it's too hard. Life is hard and it's getting harder. If you think, I was at a conference last week, in fact, in Dubai, and they were talking about, the pace of change that has happened in the tech world, in the last 20 years has been so significant. But the next 5 years, the tech change will be even faster and will basically account for more than the 20 years we've just been through. So imagine all of that's coming through the pipeline now, and how people need to welcome it with open arms, because once new tech is in, you can never reverse it. And again, in YANGA Unplugged, the last chapter talks about AI and how you create human connections in an AI world. But a lot of people are facing into like what I call techno stress right now, because they're so stressed with all the new technology. They don't know how to embrace it. They don't know how to use it, but they feel they have to do something about it. But the next 5 years are going to be a pretty fast paced world for all of us. And we have to come together as a community of humans, connecting with each other, talking to each other and helping each other to get through it.
Right. I'm really glad that you brought up community and sort of others. And I'm wondering, how do you see the effect of sort of other people in your life, be they colleagues or relatives, for example? And how should that be managed when it comes to maybe turning things into the best outcome for yourself?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, COVID and that time in COVID, obviously changed everybody's world. Even I've met a few folks saying, yeah, it didn't change me, but it's changed everybody. And what's happened now is we are in a very blurred world of profession and personal, because we have hybrid. Everyone's working a bit of hybrid. You're at home, you're in the office, and it's become a really blurred line between the two. So it's more about how do you manage your life. And what I'm finding with family members, friends, ex-colleagues, and even my current team, that helping people, not helping, but showing others how they can balance their life. Because now you have to schedule everything. If you think about it, when you're at home, you can't just go and have a coffee with somebody like you would in an office, and say, let's go and have a chat by the coffee station or the water cooler. Now you have to schedule that time when you're at home, but that takes a bit of discipline. So it's more about that life balance and how do you support each other through that life balance and be more open that, look, people have lives. As long as the work gets done and they know what to do. So that means clarity of
communication and clarity of leadership, you only gain clarity through action. So the more action you take, everything becomes more clear. By just having a document saying, here's how we're going to gain more clarity in tomorrow or next week. It doesn't work that way. You have to keep talking. You have to build those human connections. And we have to get good at talking to each other through multiple different channels.
Mm.
Yeah.
How much do you think, your actions, though, how much should they align with what your inner voice is? Was it easy for you to, figure out what your inner voice was telling you?
Oh, yeah. My inner voice, and I talk about this as well. Look, my father's inner voice used to give me some guidance, and did I always believe it? Did I always want to do it? No. Um, but he was there as a bit of a voice of guidance, and I always saw it as how do I get through my journey and have this guidance? Who do I speak to when I was going through some troubled times as a kid, as a teenager? And I was sort of thinking, God, I don't want to put my problems onto, my grandfather's already been through a lot. My mom, who's a single mom, working all hours. So I kept it to myself. So I'd be, talking to my inner voice, thinking, okay, how do I get through this? And, through the sort of triumphs and trials and tribulations of life. But it doesn't always work. So it's about, you have to, at the end of the day, it's about what you feel is the right thing to do. And others will always, dispute that, because they'll always say, okay, maybe there's a different way of doing this, but you have to feel confident in your choices. And there's three things. And I'd say that through my entire career and my sort of, 55 years now of being through work and corporate and now running my own business, there's three things that really drive a lot of my decisions. And, the first is we have choices. We all have choices to make. You and I had a choice to do this, podcast today, right? At the time we did. We all have chances, and these chances are either opportunities or risks, but we take a chance, and if you think about what's happening in the whole retail world, we talked about my experience in retail and shopper promotions. There's a huge push towards gamified shopper promotions. These are all about chances to win something or to be recognized. And the last thing is change, because we all need to manage change, and we manage change every single day. So it's how do we gear up for that? Because tomorrow will be very different to what we've just experienced today. And so, choices, chances, and change are the three things that help me get through my days and my weeks.
I see the cover of your book in your background there, and of course, I'm also taking notice of the word unplugged, and so I'm wondering, what are you feeling about the sort of human side of AI and maybe using it to help people and improve human connection? Is that possible?
100% is possible. What seems to happen is there are probably quite a few people out there who say, with AI, I don't need to talk to teams. I don't need to talk to people. I can get everything done. And absolutely, there are businesses that are being run with AI tools and systems without team members. The one thing AI cannot, and probably never will, overcome is the power of human connection and relationship management. Because one of the big capabilities going forward, one of the biggest skills now for any youngster or anyone who is working, is relationship management. Because as AI starts driving a lot of the either the admin tasks or just some of those day-to-day tasks that need doing, it frees up time for people to talk to each other, to structure deals, to structure partnerships. And you can't, AI is not going to do that for you. That all happens through relationships, because people buy people, and it's all about the trust. So building trusted relationships is probably one of the biggest skills now going forward. And that, building and creating better human connections is what I believe AI will enable us to do. But it's up to us to start going out and speaking to each other and openly collaborating and talking to each other. But people, I think some people out there do have a bit of fear of the social interaction in networking forums or conferences or whatever. Because if you go to a conference, I was there last week in Dubai in a conference. I was looking around the room, just scanning the room. There's 400 people in this room. I'd say at least 50% of them were looking at their phones, whilst the presenter was presenting some fantastic insights and fantastic thought leadership, but people were distracted. I think people's attention span is very low right now. And so how do you gain their attention whilst they're sort of trying to navigate different channels and different, whether it's their mobile or whatever else they're doing, and, this fear of missing out seems to be getting stronger and stronger, but the other thing we need to be all aware of is the fear of becoming obsolete. If we're not learning, and we learn from people when they're talking to us about some of their experiences, and some of the fantastic speakers last week, created some real interesting thought and insights. But I think maybe half the audience lost the attention because they were on their phones.
It does sound like a real opportunity for many of us to have it step up and show our human sides.
It's a discipline, Drew. Like if you are going to be here, like you and I on this podcast, if I'm on my phone, looking down, looking at my phone, it's distracting. It's why are we going to do that? So as one of my behavior changes, and believe me, I was one of those folks, a few years back, I had my phone glued to me all the time. I now purposely put it away. There's certain times in the day I don't look at it. I mean, how much are you going to miss out in an hour? The world is not going to collapse in the next 60 minutes if you don't have your phone by your side, if you don't look at WhatsApp or whatever else it's going to be. But, we're in that fast-paced communication world. And I think shaping behavior and changing behavior takes time, to form new habits. It takes a good 12 to 18 months.
Hmm. Hmm. Not to mention that I find that the best things happen to me when I've been away from my phone for a few hours.
There you go. There you go. People don't realize, if you actually have a detox, and one of the things I'd love to put out there to the audience of this podcast is take 7 days and have 7 days without your phone. You know what? You see the world. You'll see the world in a different way because you're not looking down at something all the time. You're looking up. You're taking it all in. But I actually tried not using my phone for a week, and the first 2 days were I thought I was going to just never survive it. Honestly, it was one of those things. I was reaching out somewhere to pick up something to hold on to, but you soon start seeing the world when you don't have that in your hand, and you start talking to people, you have conversations, and you end up learning a lot.
Right. Right. Prem, in just a couple of minutes that we have left, could you tell us a little bit about how you help individuals?
How do I help individuals? So look, I put a bit of realism into today's world, because the theory and all the, I've done my degree, I've done various things, I've done postgrads, I've done a qualification in coaching. All the theory is great because it lays a foundation, but in real life, it's very, very different, because in real life, in the corporate world, it's day to day, there's problems and challenges that you have to think on your feet very quickly. So what I do is try and help in sort of 3 ways. One, when I'm talking to a lot more of the younger generation, I try and bring in the foundations of what does it mean to have a growth mindset versus that fixed mindset. How do you open up your minds to grow? That's one. The second then I look at is simplify all the problems, because we complicate the problems ourselves as human beings.
we sometimes make little problems into a big challenge, and then we overthink it. So I basically go through some techniques and exercises on how to overcome overthinking and not be stuck with the analysis paralysis, because we sometimes overanalyze everything. And then finally, it's using my own experience of going through some tough times where I failed miserably, was at the sort of at a low point where I thought, how do you actually come out of this? It's sharing some of the experiences, say, look, there are ways to come out of this. And how do you reframe your thinking to think, okay, I've had an issue. I can't do anything about what's happened already. There's two things I try and leave with everyone I'm working with, because there's two things you can never get back. One is your time that you invested and your energy that you invested. So if you've invested your energy in very negative things with negative energy drainers, then that's your choice again. But it's up to you to choose where you invest your time and your energy, because those two things you'll never get back.
Wonderful. This is Big4 More, and we've been speaking to Premal Patel. He's the author of YANGA Unplugged. Prem, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you. Appreciate you having me here. Thank you.